all different sizes, from large to all these in my hand. Now I'm going to show you in this video how cutting a few holes, making a few different sizes can help improve your fishing when fishing down the edge at these commercials. As you can see today, I'll spin you around. We're at Hampton Springs Fishery and we're catching a few fish in the edge with micras and a piece of meat on the hook. So I'm going to run you through all about how I go about making these transform your fishing, but you've got to be picking the right one. So enough waffling, let's get stuck onto the box and catching some fish, and I'll show you all about it. So let's get stuck into what sort of pole pot sizes I'm looking to fish for what sort of scenarios. So this sort of scenario for pole pots is when I'm going to be clumping bait in. So what I mean by that is feeding one hit of bait into the peg. You'll see when we start fishing how I go about doing that. But the different sizes are all different volumes. Now there's only actually 3 sizes in which I've got here. Then I've just cut the pole pot to doctor what I need it to do. And also you might notice there's bigger holes in the sides of some of the pole pots. That just allows the bait to release out a lot quicker and helps me speed up my fishing. These F1s and carp are really fast feeders. They come into your peg really aggressive, and the last thing you want to do is slow your bait getting into your peg, because it can cause misbites, foul hookers, and it just slows you down from catching fish. As these few little tricks and tips can help you put more fish in your net just by like little things about your pole pots being the right size. So I'm just going to go through. I've got a small, a medium and a large. Now for a lot of my F1 fishing, say like Western Pools, Monk Hall, Tunnelbarn Farm, Partridge Lakes, places like that, Snake Lake sort of venues where you're fishing with, say, with micro pellets to far banks, or fishing like Westwood Lakes as well, fishing short poles, fishing in certain depths like 18 inch, 2 foot, 3 foot, then a lot of my fishing will be done with this first 2 pot, the small pot. It's not a lot of bait. I can get away with that with pellets. I don't need to feed a lot of volume of bait. I can get away with that for like sort of F1 fishing. Now if I'm fishing with, say, with micro pellets for carp, then I can start to use a cut down medium or a medium, just because I feel like the volume of bait for carp, you can get away with feeding a bit more bigger volumes of bait. So looking at it, the small ones sort of like my small carp and F1s, when there's a lot of fish feeding, you just want to trick them into catching a few fish. But when you feel like you need to draw a few fish in, like late on in the session, or you feel like you're on a carp peg, if you need to feed a little bit more volume of bait, it just attracts a few more carp, then look to use like a cut down medium or a medium sized pot. Now this is where it changes for the bigger sort of pots. I see a lot of people on the bank, and especially when I've been out and about with people as well, is they just use one pot for all fishing, so whether it's ground bait, pellets, stuff like that. But you've got to think about the volume of bait for how you're catching the fish. So I'm looking at the first 3 pots there for sort of like micro pellet fishing, clumping in micro pellets, but these last 3 pots are where they come into their own for ground bait. Obviously ground bait's a lot less, you can get away with feeding a lot more ground bait than you can with micro pellets. It doesn't fill the fish up as much and it's a lot more attractive. So say if I'm fishing again for F1s and stuff, I'm going to be looking to use a medium, sort of like cadding every chuck. So what I mean by that is feeding every time I go in, I'm feeding a lot of ground bait every time. So look, if I do that, I don't want to put too much bait in my peg, so I look to use a medium pot. But as sort of the session goes on and you may be fishing down the edge and you're looking to target them bigger fish, then you can't go wrong with a cut down large, or my go-to would be a large. It's the right amount of bait just to pin into the bottom, just to catch enough fish, but you've got to drag the fish into your peg. So you may think it's a bit simple, just a cupping kit or cupping kit style, or for cad pots, depending what you're fishing with, but it's really important the volumes of bait. So just run it through again. So the small one we're looking for, like my fishing I do is F1s and smaller carp. Middle one is sort of like going towards the micro pellets, where you might have to feed a bit for a bigger carp, and then when you move on to the last 3, they come into their own with ground bait. Now you might go to a venue where ground bait's not allowed, so you think, what do you do then for big carp? Well, you can easily just fish one of them with micro pellets. We're going to fish today in the edge, and we're going to probably use the medium pot, but you can take all these off with ease. Now pot position is really important, where you need it on your pole. I see too many people with the pole pot that far back. Now if you think you're probably 4 inches away from the end of your pole there, now if you feed your bait there, your rig's here, so you're going to be 4 inches away, so it can cause foul hookers, silly indications and misbites. But that's where I'd like it, just on the end. So I have literally the frame of the pot in line with a PTFE. It's not going to interfere with your rig, but when I put it on the water, I'm going to have to lean over slightly just to make sure, because you've got to remember when it hits the water you're coming down at an angle. So when you come down, you're not coming down flat like that, you're coming down at an angle like that. So you've got to compensate 1 or 2 inch. So just push it forward slightly. So like so. So you push it, say my watch is where I want to fish. So if I wanted to fish where my watch was, I think I'm in line, look, missing it. If I just push it forward slightly, bang on the money. So you've got to be careful of where you feed your bait. So that's the pole pot we're going to use. And fishing in the edge, we're just fishing with micro pellets here. We might put a bunch of maggots or a piece of meat on the hook. Now I have been feeding it, so there's a few fish there. I can see them coming in and colouring it up. So you might think, well, what sort of rig? Okay, take that off. What sort of rig are we looking to fish down there? So it's probably 16, 17 inch deep, that down the edge, which is a perfect depth. So I've just got a carp shallow and a 4x14, just because it's nice and heavy. I can get a lot of shot down the line. It's a nice short stubby float, so I can get the rig into position. Just got a back shot there, 13 shore slip, and then I've simply got a 3-inch hook length, 0.15 to a 14, because we might hook a few big fish today. You might hook a fish up to say 4 or 5 pound. There might be some bigger fish lurking around, and then literally a bulker shot or bulker stops right above that, so it pins the bait straight down to the bottom. You see when we this style of fishing how quick and efficient you've got to be. The last thing you want to do is feed your bait and let the fish just drift in and miss your chance. You'll be feeding your bait. I like to give it 3 seconds under the water. That's why them holes are in the pot. 3 seconds under the water, 1, 2, 3, lift it up, and then it gives me about 4 or 5 seconds to set my rig, which you'll easily do with a 4x14 carp shell. It's a nice stubby float with a lot of weight down the line. Just get it into position and then you're fishing straight away. So enough of that. We've talked about volumes of bait. I'll show you when we go fishing how I go about loading it, how I'm trying to get the most out of it, because it's really important you don't squeeze it too hard, because it takes longer for your bait to come out. And also them holes on the side are going to help you put some bait in your peg, and obviously we'll try and catch some fish now. So enough waffling. That's a simple guide of pole pots when clumping in baits such as micro pellets and ground bait. Don't get me wrong, there is a time and a place for the big pot, as when you're fishing on bigger style commercials, say like Larford Lakes, Meadowlands, where you're feeding a lot of bait. That's when your sort of 150 and 250mm pots come in with your cupping kit, because you're going to have to feed a volume bait to draw them fish in. It's all about trying to think about what volume of bait you need to put how many fish in your peg. You're not going to get, for example, if you start ground baiting a cut down small every time for a big 10 pounder, it's going to take a lot of bait to try and attract that fish into the peg. But if you do put a 250mm pot in, it makes it a lot easier to catch them and attract them. So like I said, enough waffling. Let's try and get stuck into one of these carp down the edge. Right, so that's enough waffling, because I feel like I did waffle a bit then. So I'm just literally going to hook a piece of meat onto my rig, and then I'm going to start on the medium pot. So how I like to fill my pot is, it's important you don't literally push it in and then push it in as hard as you can, because when you put it onto the water it's going to be really hard and you don't want to make a sound when you're tapping it out. So literally how I do it is literally get your pole pot straight over your micro pellets, drop them in so it creates a little dome, and all I do is just put that dome slightly in. So when I get to my mark now, I want to sneak this bait in. So what I mean by this is I want to put the pot in the water, 1, 2, 3, it all sneaks in, rig straight over in position. So you can see why now we've got a nice heavy rig. The last thing you want that is not wafting around and taking ages to come in, because you might find you get a quick bite. Now I can't see anything colouring up at the minute because the lake's not as coloured as it will be in the summer months, but I'm expecting you'll be able to tell signs when a fish comes in. You see a bit of movement, see a bit of colour, you might even see a tail come up. Now what you might find is you might need 2 or 3 feeds to draw a fish in. Just like I said before, it's all dependent on the volume of bait. When the fishing's good, you can get away with just feeding this every time, but sometimes you might have to feed 3 or 4 times to get the volume of bait in to drag one into your peg. So I'm not going to be quite lazy and just sit there for 5 or 6 minutes and not feed again. Literally, if I don't feel like, unless I miss a bite, if I don't feel like there's anything coming in my peg, I'll come back again and feed. There's a fish tailing up right by my bait. You can see him. Now one thing you might do, because it's not like tight in the edge here, the bottom's not perfect. So what you might find is the fish might miss your rig and it might give indication it might spook out. So don't be, didn't do that, but don't worry about if that happens, where if you miss him, you can just literally take your time. But I think it's a nice F1. Oh, let's pull my puller kit and you come up. Yeah, so nice F1. Lovely. Just a nice simple way of fishing. Try and hold him up, but he'll probably flash around, not be with the camera. It's a lovely F1 that. Just on a piece of meat. So it's all about volume. You feel like if you fed a small pot there, I wouldn't have dragged that fish in. But because we've been feeding that up and I feel like we've attracted fish into the peg, what you might find is you might be changing your pot size throughout your little session. So little tip is, if you feel like you're not getting any signs or indications and you feel like you should be catching, you might not be feeding enough. It's really important just to be regular feeding, but also when you do feed, like now, just make sure everything's in the right way. So 1, 2, 3, lift that rig up straight into position, hold it still, drop him down. You're fishing straight over your little trap straight away. Especially if you've got F1s in your peg, because they're a lot faster than carp. They don't mess around, them things. They come flying in, pick up your bait. They're really aggressive and fast feeders. See there, I've had an indication like the rig's moved slightly. It's not a bite, but I'm like, yep, something's coming to the peg or around there or moving round. So all I'm waiting for is that sharp little ding. Now, because I've got a little pile of bait, missed him. Because I've got a little pile of bait, I'm hoping that the fish just targets it and comes straight in. So a lot of people now be like, oh, should I refeed? Yeah, because you don't know where your bait is and it's not going to do any harm unless you start getting really problems with foul hookers. But 1, 2, 3. Once you do it a few times, you'll get used to it, but always try and keep your back shot so your rig's not drifting into the lake. It's just, if it moves slightly, just let it naturally move, and then if it starts to drift out of position, you can reset it again. But just be careful, because the craft of these fish, what you'll find is you won't get any signs sometimes and they'll be sat just around your feed. If you start laying your rig around, you might like bump into them and cause them to foul hook and prick the fish. But such a fast, exciting way of fishing when you do catch them in the edge. As you can see, I'm just fishing a short kit and a short free. It's about being nice and patient, letting them imagine them fish just creeping into the edge, coming to feed. They see your piece of meat, whacks under. Basically what you're trying to achieve is trying to put the right amount of fish, right amount of bait in your peg, just to attract a couple of fish to come in so they're a lot easier to catch. The last thing you want to do is put loads and loads of bait in, attract loads of fish, because you're just giving them too many free offerings. And what that'll do is just make them a lot harder to catch, and that's where you can cause your foul hookers and your missed bites, and you can have issues where you see people missing bites and foul hooking them and have a bit frustrating. You can see the fish in your peg, but all you've done is just give them a little bit too much to eat and chance to graze over. As where if you just feed a little bit, I'm more than happy just to sit here, be nice and patient, and wait for it to little like sharp dink and go under. Like again, if I don't get any bite any soon, I will think about coming back and feeding. Just grab that rig, it's moved a little bit. Let's say we're on like a sort of like a point, the lake comes down from like a canal style and then bends round. It's like a turn, so that's where we're fishing. So you can imagine fish can come at all angles, where the two of us can come down the bank from this way, you can come this way, you can come in from the lake. So what you might find is you might not be enough bait there at the minute, or enough fish coming into your peg. I've not had any indications, but sometimes you can find they just creep up, fly under. See, I'm thinking probably I need to refeed now. So I'm going to come back. I'm not just going to sit there and talk about it. I'm going to do it. Refeed, medium pot again. 1, 2, 3. So all them bigger holes, just helping it, adapting it. Obviously push the rig out, push the bait out. into my peg. See the fish just come in the peg there, just had a little sign, so. What you find, the more fish, sometimes you get 1s and 2s come in. Once you get 2s and 3s and 4s, that's when they really compete, and that's when it makes them dead easy to catch. Like I say, you've got to feed enough bait. There's no point just feeding tiny small amounts. You've got to work out what the volume of bait they want on the day. That's why it's important to have different sizes of pots instead of just one size does all. You probably had days where the large pot, you've had brilliant days on it, and then you've had days where you don't get any bites or you foul hook them. It's just because you might be one of them days where it's not work for you because you put too much in or you're not putting enough in. So that's the beauty of it. You need to work out what to feed and how much to feed. That's why it's enjoyable, this sort of fishing. See, there's a sign there. Just need him to find the hook bait. It's a lot more accurate than loose feeding because you just literally, you've got a tiny little area, probably the size of your pole sock. There's a nice flat bottom, and you need to put a little pile of bait on that, and that's where the fish are going to home in on. I feel like because you've got such a heavy float and your bulk's right near the bottom, when the fish comes in or just brushes past it, I feel like it does give you a sharp indication. I feel like a lot of the times when you get a proper bite, you don't miss it. With this sort, I feel like the fish are coming to the margin to feed, so when they suck that bait in, I feel like you don't really miss too many bites. But there you are. I've probably had 2 or 3 feeds, I think it is. Not too sure, and then a fish has come in now, and you can see where it's disturbing the bottom. Obviously colouring up, tailing up. So you're just thinking, right, well, it's took 2 or 3 feeds to get that going. You might think, well, what if I just smack a large pot on? But I just think if you keep doing that and you need to feed and you miss a few bites, you're going to put a lot of bait in your peg. It's going to mount up, as where you are going to miss a few bites and get a few sign indications of where you're going to have to refeed again. There you are, it's back now. So see that there, you just shot the peg. Not sure what it was, it might be a carp or an F1. I think it's an F1. Yeah, big F1. So, told you they're fast, aggressive feeders, but you can't beat that for a bit of edge fishing. Try and unhook him. Try and hold him up, keep my rig out of the way. So we'll hold him up for the camera. So there you are. Make sure your cab pots are correct and you can get out on the bank and catch fish like this. So thank you for watching, guys. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and just comment below any future videos you want to see, and I'll see you on the next one.